Hey everyone, welcome back. It is Saturday night. I am here chatting with all of you fine folks because we are having some good times. There we go. Hello everybody. I am your friendly neighborhood Prax. Welcome to the channel. It's Saturday night, and that means I talk about books. Books that I've read this week, books that I'm interested in, books that have caught my eye and I want to catch up with and see more about. All of the good book talk fun. And I'm using talk T-A-L-K, not T-O-K. Time. Hope you all had a great week. Thank you for hanging out with me tonight. It is indeed a Saturday night and I'm just chilling. It's a chill vibe. It's, you know, we all here, we all want to be doing good things and seeing how life goes. I had a list of books I was originally going to read for this week, and then two of the books I was going to read, well, I was not able to get from the library, so didn't end up reading those, which meant instead I changed what I was reading. Also, you know, support your local libraries and be flexible in what your reading choices are. I very much am a person of like, ooh, I want to read this today. I guess they're calling it a mood reading now is the term. I am a mood reader to an extent, to the point that I'm like, oh, this is something I'm going to pick up. But at the same time, also major kudos for the titles, for the discussion of Prax's favorite titles. I mean, yeah, I'm here for this. But I am, you know, like, I like to support independent authors. I like to support authors of color, various diverse reading options. And unfortunately, the original plan was to finish the Greenbone saga by reading Jade War, which is the third book in this trilogy. And that was out of my library, so that didn't end up happening. And at the same time, I was going to read the second book in the Dreamblood duology, which is... Oh, I totally blanked on it. Wait, hold on, I know this. N.K. Jemisin... What's the second book in the duology? The first book is The Killing Moon, and the second book, Shadowed Sun, was going to be the book that I was going to read. And I ended up, both Jade War and Shadowed Sun were not in the library. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not reading those. I guess, I don't know, apparently mood reading, according to, like, Instagram and those people, you know, in YouTube, is, like, mood reading is just picking up and reading what's in your mood and having a giant... Don't worry about your giant TBR, just read what comes to you, and I'm just like... Okay. Oh, thank you for that time. I appreciate all those wonderful gift subs. All of those fabulous gift subs. Sharing out all of those. Hope everybody enjoys those gift subs as they get them. But yeah, so apparently that's what mood reading is. I am very much of I am a reader. I will pick, like, I guess maybe I'm a mood reader, but at the same time I'm also a completionist. So if I pick up the first volume in a series and I like it, I'm going to read the rest of the series right away if it's available. Like, all of it at once, because I like it and I want to read them all. Couldn't do that today, this week, with N.K. Jemisin or Fonda Lee's Jade War, which is the third book. So hold off and put those on for next week, hopefully. Which meant instead I did finish the currently available of Catherine Reynolds' Fae Realm series. Finished finished 4 and 5. And then the final book, it was kind of hilarious. I posted on Instagram. On my Instagram, I posted a, short story about like how emotionally compromised I was by book 4 while I was at work. And like 5 minutes later, Catherine posted on Instagram the real teasing book 6, and that book 6 will be dropping probably in the autumn of this year. And I'm like, that's going to be a very long wait. But I am here for it. I am here to read and support that. And then, so I read, and I'm being attacked by books and GM screens, which are great. So I read The Queen's Shadows, and The Horns of the Hunt, which are books 4 and 5 in the Fae Realm series. We'll talk about those. And I might put a spoiler tag up to talk about spoilers, because I finished the currently available portions of the entire series, so there might be series spoilers. And then I finished volume 2, I had to make sure I grabbed the right one, of Elizabeth Wheatley's Dangerous Assassin series, Dangerous Outlaw. Also really enjoyed this, so we'll come back to this. So let's talk non-spoiler for book 4 and 5 of the Fae Realm series, starting with book 4, which is The Queen's Shadows. And can we take a second and appreciate the art that Catherine does for the covers of her books? Like, these are gorgeous. I absolutely love this. This is a completionism, a reaction into studying Livy. No time. If my completionism was a reaction to studying Livy, I would be permanently pissed in existence. Because, hi, I don't know if you know this. I know that Time knows this, but I don't know if anybody else knows this. De Urba Condita, which is the book, which is Livy's history of Rome, on the founding of Rome, is incomplete. There are massive sections of it that we just don't have. It's just not available. Like, it doesn't it existed. We know that it existed because other books reference it. Even Livy references back to it at various points, but it's no longer, like, we don't have any manuscripts of it. We don't have any translations of it. We don't have any text of it. And there are just big chunks that are missing. And you're just like, can I scream in frustration? No, this is just me being a completionist in general. So, non-spoiler discussion first. Book 4. So, like I said, book 1 is really The Blessing of the Equinox. It introduces you to the first two main characters, Marsilia and Fiel, and it's a kind of very classic fairy tale, folk tale quest story. Introduces the characters with a concrete quest that completes it, leaves open the kind of possibility of more, but at the end of it, this theoretically could be a standalone book. Book 2 is The Wolf and the Warlock. Introduces you to the wider world, introduces you to the more complexities of the world, and has a complete concrete narrative and a quest that is introduced, but this is also going to introduce you to what will be the overarching narrative and the overarching struggle for the rest of the series. And I think it does work really, really well. It's a really great kind of explanation for how this world works, where everybody is, how things are going to progress. And then you have a finite point in book 2, but you still end up with openness that will lead into the rest of the series. Book 3 is where you're definitely into the Broken Dragon, and our boy Fiel is on the cover there. Introduces you to this. Now you're diving deep into this complex, overarching, world-saving conflict. What the rest of the series is going to be focused on. This is going to be your point of, okay, how will our characters, there will be there are 3 books that have to come after this. There are going to be points where things are not going to be so great for our characters, and we know that because, there are 3 more books that are going to come after this one. And so there's a point at which you're like, okay, I know I'm going to have emotional moments, I'm going to be upset, but it does a really good job of setting the narrative to introduce you to this point, to get you to where you're going, and having a complete story but still being open-ended. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then you get to book 4, and book 4, you are no longer, your point of view characters are no longer Marsilia and Fiel. It is Grizel and wait, go this way. Amion. Grizel and Amion are hella which are 2 very interesting different point of view characters that give you a very different perspective, but also gives you a lot of the history of this world and a flashback to see where we have this current conflict, but what were the points that got you to this point, and it's done really, really well. And then the last of the currently available books, which is also the longest at 311 pages. You are neck deep into this conflict. This is tense, emotionally driven. You are, if you want a happy ending, you are not going to get it at this point because, sorry, this is book 5 and to go into book 6, right? Like, you are not, this is emotionally beats. This is going to be a struggle. This is where you see your characters at their both low point, but also a discovery of where things are going and finding out the plot, the villain's evil plot and how you're going to achieve that and what you need to do. And then there's book 6. And I don't have book 6 yet because book 6 hasn't been published yet, and book 6 won't get out until later this year. I want you to know that I read 4 and 5 in less than... I read them both in the same day. I don't know if that was good or bad, but it's a thing I did. So, you will eventually, like, this book, this series is very, very well written. It's very well focused. The character work is fabulous. I love how the story is progressing. I love how Catherine is using both folktales and the mythology that exists and the histories that are available, and taking that and applying it in a way that's true to those folktales, but also just slightly different. So, look, Crit, there are not 12 books. There are only 6. There are only 6. Don't worry. But it's very much a very folktale driven, so Coldrake is standing here telling me that I'm just into those elven pretty boys. I would like you to tell me that these are not beautiful. I'll wait. Catherine does beautiful art. She does all of her own cover art. These are absolutely gorgeous. Also, This boy, oh, this man, by the way, he's hella married. But that's okay. I support him being hella married. It's okay. Can you see how cool he is? Little snowflakes on his armor. But he's wearing a crown. That crown is really important because it doesn't match the snowflakes. I'm just saying, he's very important. But welcome in, Faye. So you have this moment of like, okay, you know that these characters are going to have to go through a lot. It's 6 books. Book 6 isn't out yet, but like you know that book 1 introduces you to the characters and introduces you to the world. There's a finite story. It ends, and you don't really know of any bigger overarching plot, but that's okay. It feels like there's more to this world to explore. Book 2 is like, hey, there is more to this world. Let's slowly introduce you. Oh, you're going to succeed really well on this step, and then get you through this, and where we go. Yeah, we're going to talk about Dangerous, the Dangerous series in a little bit, Coldrake, because I finished book 2. And so you start with that, and it's really, really well done. I think that this series is really, really good. I think that the characters are well written. I think that the, I think that the story is well developed, and the world building is strong. Also, I just love the character developments, and I love all of the relationships that it's going on, and you get to see all of these little things that you get to look forward to. So I'm going to put the spoiler tag up. Hi. Spoilers. I should make that a button. I gotta get that. So, let's see what the chat is saying before we get to spoilers. Let's see what chat is saying. So Coldrake is saying, starting book 3 of the Dangerous series. Good. We're going to talk about book 2 later. Crit saying, I got the first 2 in the mail today. Congrats. I look forward to seeing what you. I'm going to be not overly spoilery, but I have a couple things I want to say. I'm not going to spoil plot. I don't spoil plot. And then, oh, and the Agent of Change. Agent of Change is great. Read Agent of Change, and then you don't have to read a lot of the rest. Sorry. I know that a lot of people really like Steve Miller and Sharon Lee, but I'm, like, I read Agent of Change, and then I didn't need to read the rest of that series. I was like, this is really good. And then I read the couple where I was like, oh, I'm okay with not. I'm okay with not. But yeah. So I'm going to put the spoiler tag up. And, go from there. Because I think it's... Because I want to talk about a couple particular points. Like, these are not... I'm not going to spoil plot. I am not going to spoil a lot of things, but there are a couple points I want to talk about, and I recognize that in books 1 through 5, to talk about them at all, there's going to be spoilers because it is a series, and the books do build on each other, and there's going to be points at which you're like, okay, where are we doing? So I want to put the spoiler tag up, so that if anybody has any concerns, I'm going to put it up, and then I'll take it down when we're done. But there are a couple things I want to talk about, because I think this series really does a really, really great job of a couple things that I want to highlight. Also, I got a gush, so there's that. So, first up, book 1. Love it, read it, enjoy it, just all of it. All of this series. All of this series, all of the time. And so what I think sums up this series so well where did she put it? Nope. 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 No. Oh. No. No. Because Catherine posted in her Discord, and I saw it, and it looks so cool, and I wanted to share it because I'll be like, yeah, that's great. Oh, no, here it is. Okay. So she's decided, one of the things that I most loved about this book is this line, which is, I think, sums up this whole series really, really well, and I wanted to make sure I said the line correctly, and I was looking for it last week, and I couldn't find it, but, Catherine very handily designed her, and she's like, oh, this is the tattoo I'm going to get, and it uses the line that I wanted to remember, so I was like, oh, let me pull that so I can remember it. The average man makes great dwarfs small and beautiful witches ugly to feel better about himself. And I was like, yes, this is this whole book. We have Marcelia, who is this beautiful, like, wonderful white witch healer who needs to go on this quest to save people and heal a bunch of people and do all these things, and she needs her protector, who happens to be Fjell, who is a dwarf who is 6'8" and very much a Norseman with red hair and, oh, hi. Oh, well, dropped that. He's the cover of book 3. You know? There we go. Look at him. Look at him. Isn't he great? But he's... So, book 1. Concrete little story. Marcelia and Fjell. Oh, I didn't throw any books. The books I didn't throw. Small toy on my desk, yes. Book 2. Because what we're dealing with the Fey realm. We're actually dealing with the actual Fey realm, right? Like, the summer, the Seelie and the Unseelie, the summer and winter courts, Queen Mab and Queen Titania, and then the Ladies of Autumn and the Lady of Spring. Beautifully done. Politicking going on, as well as the dwarven kingdom of Svartalheim. And... Svartalfheim. I keep forgetting that F, not elf. F. And all of the other, like, folklore kingdoms of the Fey realm, right? Like, Marcelia's adopted father is a puka. So, great. And then this is Alessandra. She is a elf she's originally a wild elf, and who swears allegiance to the Winter Court and Queen Mab. Good for her. She's fabulous. And, you know, this one deals with finding, you know, the politics of the situation, the beginnings of the overarching plot, the beginnings of the biggest problems, and how, you know, Gwenapnod and the Wild Hunt will fuck your life up. Which is basically who is going to be your main villain of the plot, right? And you're dealing with the politics of, at the upper level, the politics of Gwynapnud and the summer and winter courts of the Fae, who had broken off from what was the kingdom of King Gwenapnod, and the Wild Hunt, and they stole power, and they you know, Tatiana and Mab are now have their own authority and had protected the Elven Fey realms for like 3,000 years, and now Gwynapnod is making his move, and it's not going to go well. Right? Like, the Lord of the Wild Hunt, the King of the Dead, who can literally raise dead elves into and transform them, or create Draugr, who are dead dwarves, and force them to fight for him, or all of these things. It's not going to go well, right? Like, you are fighting the king of what should, like, basically a demigod, right? Like, he has authority and power, and even is gaining more authority. You know, it's nice ties into how he gains authority and power from the dead, and from, like, death and darkness rising through the mortal realm, and how that feeds into the Fey realm, but also how the spirit realm all ties together. And you're like, all of this is very well thought out. It's very well explained. It kind of builds into its own thing. And I'm, you know, appreciate that, because it works really, really well. I think that this is, you introduce a bunch of characters here that are really, really great and really, really kind of interesting. You see the progression of Marsilia and Fjell rising through, you know, who they are, taking their positions, you know, going from being, you know, a wood witch and a noble dwarf, but hasn't been part of the court for reasons that I'm not going to get into because they're important for plot, you know, and seeing how they come back to being interacting with the society as a whole, what they can bring to it, what they're supposed to be doing, and how society begins to respond to them, and how these things are all going to tie together. Very well done. You. Then you get book 3, which is The Broken Dragon, where we are now, book 2 introduced this war with Gwynapnod. Book 3 is, how are you going to deal with this? This is, you are now, okay, you found out that you are now at war. You have to deal with this. You have to fight off both, you know, the political issue of those dwarves who are siding with Gwynapnod and the Wild Hunt, and how dangerous that is for the rest of this dwarvish society. You have to see about the political ramifications of the, you know, interactions with the rest of the Fey realm, right? Like the winter and summer courts, the autumn court and the spring court, and the unaffiliated Fey creatures, and not, I'm always going to forget this. How do you say it? Not the, which is the, you know, for all of the wild Fey creatures that kind of exist as, you know, their own little thing. And then all of, you know, how are they going to interact? What, you know that the Wild Hunt is a threat. You know that the Wild Hunt is expanding and growing and becoming a bigger problem. How are you going to deal with this? You need to deal with this, you know, but you have to, but right now you're kind of hyper focused on the politics that you have to deal with, and where Fjell and Marsilia end up at the end of this book is just, I knew it was going to happen when I discovered certain things in book 1 and 2 about Fjell's position. And you're like, oh, I read a lot of books. I read a lot of fantasy. I am culturally literate. I know where this is eventually going to go to. I don't know how we're going to get there, but I know what we're going to. And so as part of that, this book gets us to that point and brings a lot of emotions into it. Then we switch gears, and you like kind of get to a point where you know where in book 3 you kind of get to a point. Book 4 introduces Grizel and Aemon, right? Is that how we're saying his name? I should double check. One of the things I really appreciate, Aemon. One of the things I really appreciate that Catherine does is she gives us at the back of the book, for every character and place name, a pronunciation guide. I love this. Please, more fantasy authors do this. Give us a pronunciation guide. Tell us how we're supposed to pronounce these names. Tell us how you think these words are supposed to be said. And it will help a lot. So, Grizel is a shadow assassin lord and lord of secrets and spy master for the Winter Court. And Aemon is the shadow assassin lord and spy master for the Summer Court. And they have to work together because of, you know, discovery of certain points of Gwen, how exactly are they pronouncing it? Yeah, King Gwyn's plot. And you're like, great. This is why I say that most books that label themselves, particularly current books that are in the romance or romantasy, genres, that talk about being enemies to lovers, yeah, they're not. This is enemies to lovers. These are lords of the Winter and Summer Court who are thousands of years old and hold high rank in the Winter and Summer Court. And oh wait, we talk about in this book series the actual way in which the folklore around Mab and Tatiana shifting the seasons was perpetual fighting between the two courts. And like the high elves were immortal, like literally immortal, because unless of course they were killed by the King Gwyn because of reasons, but we'll get to that. But they would fight all over the field of battle and then shift the season, and there we go. And you're like, these characters have literally fought on the field of battle each other multiple times. But now they need to work together. And this book is part flashback and part current events. So like one chapter would be introducing what the problem is. You know, the first chapter introduces what the overarching plot is and what the big conflict is going to be. And then the next chapter is, okay, well, let me go, you know, we dealt with a portion of this big thing that happened and how this is, we thought we dealt with this. Let me go back through my own, diaries and journals from that time period and read through what happens. And so you shift to the flashback of that character's viewpoint on what happened. And then it'll go back to the next chapter to the other character who's talking about, you know, the current events. And then maybe you get a couple extra details from their viewpoint. But really, it's not going back and forth showing the same thing twice, but it really does a good job of balancing the past and the future, the past and the present, and the rising tension. And then the slow burn of decades of slowly becoming not enemies, you know, reluctant allies, to not enemies, to maybe I won't actively go out of my way to kill you on this field of battle, even though we fight each other every year for millennia. Maybe I'll just, like, stay away and not fight you. To the characters within their own minds acknowledging affection for each other, to oh, I know what you're talking about, Cole. I'll get to that in a second. So, like, slowly building affection for each other, and then acknowledging in their own minds this, and then the realistic discussion and point of, maybe we shouldn't talk about our emotions because of each other, because of currently, our queens are, like, literally still at war, and even though we know that there's this bigger overarching enemy that is King Gwyn, and the Wild Hunt, and all of these things. But at the end of the day, Tatiana and Mab are still going to fight for the season change, and we're still going to have to fight each other. And that may not be a good thing if we have feelings for each other. This book emotionally destroyed me and emotionally compromised me at work. And it is just so well done and so focused and so, like, where's my... I took pictures of certain passages because I was like, well, I'm going to need to talk about this. Because of reasons, we're going to need to talk about this. So in one of the flashback scenes, Grizel is fighting an evil sorceress, and the sorceress says, "Did you think I'd come protected only by a draugr?" The sorceress laughed, glancing over at him, corking the vial. "Honestly, yes," Grizel answered as he grappled to disengage from the two spirit beasts. And you're like, wait, you're honestly going to turn around and, this evil sorcerer that has come to kill a bunch of people and do a thing and do plot things, and you're like, did you think I would only come did you really think I would only come protected by a single draugr? And, like, you can see this scene, right? Like, you can see how this plays out. Like, sinister, evil sorceress, like, attractive but deadly, standing there, having just murdered somebody, sucked the life force out of them, or sucked something out of life force out of them, put them in a vial. And you've got this dark-haired elf, and it's important that I mention the dark hair because he is of the winter court versus the summer court. Those are two different things, and they actually have physical differences. Who appears and is fighting with two swords against spirit beasts of, like, spirit-summoned beasts. And she's like, did you honestly think I would only be protected by the single draugr? Ha! Like, mocking, and then you see him just go, like, no, honestly, yes, I thought you were that stupid. You're like, wait, what? Oh, yes, and I do send gushing reviews. I've posted multiple gushing reviews about this book. I'm going to push more, but, and then we get to the scene where Eamon, who is of the summer court, and Grizel, who is of the winter court, had finished reading back through their background, and they go back to this point where they're like, okay, well, no, this is still part of the flashback. It seems we have quite the report to make to our respective queens, Eamon said, casting a sidelong glance at his counterpart, and that this may not be the last time we have need to work together. Do you think you can actually manage that next time? Grizel asked pointedly, raising an eyebrow as he looked over at the Seelie Lord, without casually shoving me aside into danger. You hadn't spotted the Groch Riven, Eamon countered, frowning. I was simply trying to get past you. It's hardly my fault if you could not rebalance yourself adequately. The two assassins' lords considered each other for a moment before Grizel laughed, shaking his head. "Oh, I loathe you. I respect you, but I truly loathe you." The faintest hint of a smile cracked Eamon's usually stoic expression. "I can assure you the feeling is mutual. I suppose this is where we part ways for now, to put in our reports and ensure we each have spies watching the witch." And, like, it gets better. "I believe so, yes," Grizel answered, then tilted his head to the side, looking back at Eamon again. "Perhaps we can meet up at Spring's Keep when Master Udon returns to hear his findings and see if each other has anything new on this witch or the wild hunt. Perhaps even share a drink of temporary peace." "Perhaps," Eamon answered, returning to his stoic expression. "Though a drink may be too much, "Suit yourself," Grizel said with a shrug, and turning to make his way through the Fey woods to the mortal realm. "See you in the fields, Lord Eamon." And then, I didn't pay attention to this page, but the next line is, "Oh, and, Eamon shouts back, 'Oh, and I like Chardonnay.'" Like, literally. This is... Yeah, exactly. This is witty banter, well written, well developed. The characters are well thought out. They're coming forward. They're dealing almost with their issues, but not quite. And then, as we get to the end of the book, I'm not going to spoil that because it is important, but I'm just going to say, I was like, oh wait, that I can't read that because that will actually be a major spoiler for the end of that book, and you will have... Look, I have emotions about the ending of this book. And I posted that, and then Catherine was snarky in her response to my story on Twitter and was like, haha. I'm like, Catherine, I see you. I see you. And then we get book 5. Okay? Book 5. The Horns of the Hunt. Remember how I said that we were going to be emotional? And that things will be emotional because there's still one more book to go, and so obviously this is the, you know, this is the Empire Strikes Back book. This is the book where the bad guys do the most winning, and then there's the most politicking, and you're just like, so many bad things happen that you're like, oh shit. Oh, I understand that life, Faye. I understand. Have a good one, Hawkeye. Enjoy your crash. But yeah, this is, everybody coming together, slowly building up, stressing, but it is indeed the low point of the book. And Catherine said for book 6 you should stock up on tissues and chocolate, and I'm like, Catherine, you already emotionally compromised me twice at work. I would just like to point out that is a thing. One other thing I would like to highlight that I think is really important about this series, that this series does a really, really good job with, and it is a thing that happens in book 3, is perspective, right? Again, you are having Gwyn ap Nod is the king of the Wild Hunt and wants to come back and take power and rule all of the Fey realm and kind of take all of that control back, and he believes himself that power. So a lot of people have to die for him to do that, or they have to surrender. One of the two, more likely the former. And so you're going to have emotional moments where characters die. And emotional moments where you're not sure if characters are going to live, it's going to be tense, all of these things. You, like, if you're a fantasy reader, if you're any kind of, like, long-term real reader, you know that this is going to be a thing. And one of the things that I really respect and thought that I would, that Catherine does a phenomenal job with, is highlighting death of characters in a meaningful way. And I talked about this when I talked about R.J. Barker's Tide Child series. But for one of the things that, you know, like, for me, characters dying has to be earned, but it also has to serve the plot of the story, right? Like, you know that characters are going to die in a war like this. You know this. You know that this is going to happen. But you need to have those deaths mean something. And there are authors that I think do that well, and then there are authors, as we have discussed, that I think do it very, very poorly. I think Catherine did a fabulous job with this. In particular, the one scene here, this is an actual spoiler for the plot, and I am going to tell you right now that this is a major spoiler for the plot, and if you want to mute, fine, go right ahead. I will take the spoiler tag down when we are done, but this is a point that is important. I guess I could tell you in the non-spoiler fashion who it is. Yeah, I'll tell you in the non-spoilery fashion who it is. Oh, beeps mute. Okay, that works. I'll tell you the spoiler spoiler. We'll do it in the spoiler way. So Fjell is on the battlefield, right? Fjell, our boy, our 6'8" dwarven warrior, who, come to find out, is the oldest son of the Dwarven King's younger brother, right? So, like, the Dwarf King has 3 younger brothers. He also has 2 sons, and Fjell is the oldest of the middle brother's children, and, you know, whatever. He's whatever. On the battlefield, in this moment, you see Fjell far across the battlefield fighting against this swath of undead dwarves, who are mostly dwarves who he knows because they've been raised by Gwyn from the previous battle. And so a bunch of these dwarves who are here, these Draugr that he is fighting, are people that he literally, like, knows. Like, I can put the name to this person. And a couple of those are really emotional. But he's across this field of battle. And you see the scene where he looks across, sees his uncle, the king, reach out. You know, he's on the field of battle. They're about to be, you know, they're fighting back against this sea of Draugr. And the king's body, you know, the king's guard are there with a shield wall. And he sees this scene where the king takes his wife, the queen's hand, kisses the back of it, and then makes a choice that ends up sacrificing himself to save the rest of this kingdom. And you see this death through Fjell's eyes. And you see how the queen reacts to this moment. You're not with the king as he dies. You are not with the queen. You are not with anybody else. The point of view character is across a field of battle but that moment is just as impactful and just as emotional as if you are in that point of view character with the king at the time. And it takes a lot of talent to do that well. And Catherine has a lot of talent and does it fabulously. It was emotional and perfect beats, and you understood why this had to happen, and it serves the plot perfectly, and it feels like a, you know, like if you're a certain level of reader and you know what this is going to happen, you knew this was going to happen because of other things that were happening and blah 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 blah, but how it's done and how it's shown is emotional and well done. And people would be like, oh, it's tropey, it's cliche. I'm like, no, no, no. You can have a cliche if it is done right. And this was done so well. And you see how the other characters react in that moment to this death and how impactful that death is to a wide array of characters, and not just, but you focus in from Fjel's point of view. And it is so well done. And that's what I wanted to say about that. And I'm going to turn the spoiler tag off now. And put that over there. But I think that scene highlights how well Catherine is as a writer, and how good Catherine is as a writer, and how emotional this series is, and how I can not wait for the conclusion of this series, and I have to, which is the thing, which is, I guess, the thing I have to do, is wait for the conclusion of this series. Okay, shifting gears to Book 2, Dangerous Outlaw. Elizabeth Wheatley's second volume in the Dangerous Assassin series, and I am not going to give any spoilers for this book. I am going to say that it is a brilliant follow-up and continuation of the first book. I am glad I bought it. I am glad I have it as a physical copy. Like, I just really pleased that I got a physical copy of this series. I am looking forward to finishing the rest of it. And will probably, because next week is Valentine's Day, just finish 3, 4, and I'm just gonna finish this for Valentine's Day. That's all I'm just gonna do. I'm just gonna read all of this. It'll be great. I further like Dangerous, our sweet cinnamon roll of a crown prince and male love interest. And I'm just of the opinion, if anything bad happens to Theodred in the next 3 books, I might lose my mind. But that's just me. Okay, Coldrake, what 2 points do you have with issue? And are they going to be big spoilers that, Crit, who has... Hey, Sly, welcome in. No, his name is Thadred. Thadred. That might be a pronunciation issue and a recording issue because you're listening to them, aren't you, on the audiobook rather than reading them physically? That might be a physical issue of the books. But Phaedrid is the best friend slash not comic relief. Like, I had somebody who was like, oh, he's the best friend, he must be the comic relief. I'm like, Phaedrid has some funny lines, but he's not the comic relief of this series. Phaedrid is not the comic relief of this series. He is, yeah. And I also respect the fact that Phaedrid is a badass fighter with a permanent disability. And there is no magic hand waving that gets rid of his magical disability. Or that gets rid of his disability through magic, I should say. And he is still a badass. Like, that is a thing that happens in this series. I knew that was going to happen. That Phaedrid is a character that is, yeah, he is a straight man, not the comic relief. He will make you laugh because he is so hilarious at times, and you're like, did you just, oh, you did, okay. I love this. Here's a great line. Here, this sums up Phaedrid not being a comic relief, but at the same time being hilariously funny. And it's non-spoilery, so I can read it to you. Back in the warehouse, they found Phaedrid lying on his back, tossing a wooden block in the air and catching it with his other hand. He didn't acknowledge them as they approached. What are you doing? Amira clipped. Waiting for you. Phaedrid sat up, resting his hands on his knees, glanced between the two of them. Something wrong? And you're just like, my boy is here. I appreciate, and this further appreciates, like, I appreciate the romantic relationship that is building between Amira and Daendrith. I appreciate how that romantic relationship is slowly developing, and one of the things that exists is respect between the two of them, and, you know, growing balance of power between the two of them. And I like that. And sometimes you have, like, you need to have that for a fantasy with heavy romance option, with a heavy romance plot, or even a heavy romance subplot to work, because if you don't like the main couple, then the book doesn't work. And you're just like, oh yeah, Coldrake, so Elizabeth Wheatley is very upfront about the fact that it is a slow burn series where you kind of have to wait till the last book, which is currently out, which has just been released, I guess, and is now a thing that can happen. But I appreciate it. I think it's going to be great because of that. I think the slow build-up is earned. I feel that the relationship between the two characters is stronger because of that slow build. I would make the comparison that the slow build of the relationship in Daendrith's series is on par with, oh god, what's their names? Oh god, what are the characters' names? I'm blanking. Oh good lord, I'm blanking on the character names. Hold up. Oh, it's on par with the slow build of an actual relationship before Claire and Jamie in Outlander, right? Because, like, That's my biggest comparison here. A lot of people are like, oh, it's like Game of Thrones. Oh, it's like this and whatever. And like, no, no, no. My comparison here is Claire and Jamie in Outlander, right? Like, two characters where things that are going on in the world actually make it important for them to get married and before they actually fall in love, and then fall in love together slowly. It just so happens that the Outlander books are like 12 times as long, but I feel like this series has that level of actual slow burn relationship. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, but it's really not a slow burn. I watched the TV series. I'm like, that TV series condenses like half a book into two episodes. And it's a choice that was made. I don't know that I agree with it 100%, but it was indeed a choice that was made. So yeah, I think I'm really enjoying this. Yeah, between Phaedrid, Phaedrid is an entirely different character. You're talking about Phaedrid, who is not Phaedrid, which is complicated. You're talking about Phaedrid and his character? You're talking about Phaedrid, right? Or not Comic Relief. You're talking about him when he gets captured by... Yeah, him and... Yeah, that other character. Yeah, okay. I was like, why are you writing Phaedrid? His name is Phaedrid. Okay, yeah. So, yes. Enjoying the book, enjoying the power dynamics, enjoying that both of them are really important for the plot of the book. That they work together, that that Dandrith is still a sweet cinnamon roll, and, oh, hey, pirate, welcome in. Thank you for bringing your crew in. How are we doing? Welcome in, raiders, welcome in. I appreciate you bringing everybody over. I am your friendly neighborhood Prax. Welcome to the channel. And how we doing? Pirate, how was the end of your stream? I appreciate you bringing everybody over. I am your friendly neighborhood Prax. Prax Goeth as me for you. See me around here on Twitch. I use she, her pronouns. And Saturday nights, we talk about books. Specifically, books that I have been reading over the week, and just having fun and enjoying and getting to introduce people to maybe some authors they haven't met before. But on Sundays, we do tabletop RPGs. And Sundays, Pirate gets to be, tomorrow, Pirate gets to be a wonderful Krogan. And if you missed out on any episode 1 or 2 of our new Mass Effect series, you can find those over on my YouTube, where everything is up. The VODs go up as soon as possible. And you can sit there and enjoy them. They are really, quite happy about the series, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. But that's on Sunday nights. Tonight's, we are talking about books. Right now, specifically, we are talking about book 2 in Elizabeth Wheatley's Dandrith's Assassin series. And no spoilers. No spoilers, don't worry. Where the book is, the series is about Amira, who is cursed to obey whoever has the oaths that she is bound to, and Dandrith, who is the crown prince of the empire, who has his own curse problems. And Amira's father has been using her as an assassin. And she is a hella badass, and Dandrith is a sweet cinnamon roll who we all want to protect. And they are engaged to be married for political reasons, among others. But can they break each other's curse? We don't know. Book 2 is Dandrith's Outlaw. It is, tensions are rising. Things are getting more complicated. I'm loving this series. I'm loving the fact that the relationship is actually really slow to build. Both characters respect each other. They respect their own individual spheres of knowledge. We also have the best friend side character in Phaedrid, who is not the comedic relief, but is indeed a wonderful, wonderful character that we are just like, if anything happens to Phaedrid, I will be very sad. Phaedrid, I also respect this series because Phaedrid is another badass warrior in this series, and he has a permanent physical disability. And there's no magic hand waving of that physical disability. Like, he walks with a cane, and it's important to the plot, but he can still fight people because he's trained himself to do so. And you're like, respect. So yeah, this series, it's been very good. I'm enjoying it. I'm going to spend the rest of next week reading the rest of the current volumes that I have, which are 3, 4, and 5. Right? Is that correct? Or do I have 3 and 4? I think I have 3 and 4. Well, I mean, he has a cane. It just happens to have a sword in it. At times. Sometimes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so books. I'm going to read 3, 4, and 5 for next Saturday, because next week is Valentine's Day. So I may as well read, you know, romantic fantasy for Valentine's Day. And because they're short, I will hopefully, because I put it on reserve, hopefully, because I put them on reserve in my library. And I always recommend that people read books in whatever manner they choose, whether that's ebook, physical book, audiobook, as long as you are embracing and supporting the author. And if you want to read books for free, go read your book from your library. Good luck, Lily. So, if I'm going to quote Elizabeth Wheatley, who, by the way, I found her on Instagram when I was scrolling through Instagram one day, and I really appreciated like her little sketch, and then she was talking about her books. I was like, oh, this book looks really great. Yeah, so Coldrake, it's not really a spoiler because it's mentioned in chapter 1 of book 1, that Phaedrid was in a horrible accident where he got rolled horrible warning for bad things, where he got crushed by a horse, and his legs and his leg and pelvis was physically crushed. Like, there is no, he was on, you know, this is not a instant, the fact that he lived is a big deal, and he walks with a cane, and so yeah, this is no way he's getting back up. But as we talk about this book series, Sly wants to know, how steamy are these romantic fantasy books? So the author says that it is a slow burn with slow development. And I will tell you that book 1 has 2 kisses in the entire book. And then book 2, and then apparently it kind of like will slow build, but mostly will end with a closed door, well, on page, not porn scene in book 6. And so I feel that it is appropriate, right? Like, this is a romance, not erotica. Those are 2 different things. And while I know that romantasy is a very popular genre in certain fields, on Instagram and TikTok and even on YouTube, I personally am not a big fan of A Court of Thorns and Roses or Sarah J. Maas. Sorry, I'm not. I know it's a horrible thing to say, but I'm personally not. I'm also think that if you were here last week, you would have listened to my rant about how bad Fourth Wing was. And I think that there are lots of ways in which things happen. And my opinion is, if you're in a fantasy series where you have a romance strong plot, and you also have a strong fantasy plot where, hi, the world is literally possibly ending, that you are being chased by villains, like there is somebody out there actively trying to murder you. Maybe sex isn't the thing on the plot. Like, time and place, people. Time and place. And I think Dangerous has done it really, really well. I will also say, we just finished talking about the Fey Realm series by, if you came over with Crit, or with Pirate, you will know the wonderful Cozy Catherine, who is married to the absolutely fabulous Artificer Zero, who did this beautiful overlay. Yes, Zero did the overlay. But Cozy Catherine wrote these books. They are very good. I enjoyed them. This is an actual romance where there is no sex on screen, but you feel the romance between the two characters. And like, romantic tension? Yes. Romance? Yes. Yeah, like, people talk about, like, bodice rip. Okay, so Coldrake and Crit are in chat are talking about ripped bodices and how there isn't one in the Dangerous series yet, and it's like, yeah, and Coldrake makes a good point. Do you know how hard it was to rip a bodice in the going from the 14th century forward? Boning is a thing, right? Like, these are all heavy quilted fabrics. They're not light. They're silks, they're satins, they're wools. They're not light cottons that you can just go, like, that's not their function. These are heavy fabrics, and if you can rip that motherfucker, good for you. But there's no bodice ripping going on at the moment. At the moment, instead, Dangerous is kicking ass and taking names, and possibly a bit of murder. You know, for her sweet cinnamon roll of a soon-to-be crown prince, possibly emperor. Also, they're on the run because of plot reasons. Just saying. Just saying. This is a really good series. I also got... So, my plan for next week is to finish out the currently available... Actually, I think I'm going to just go ahead and order the 6th book, which is... Oh, it's not out in physical paperback yet. Curses. Foiled again. So the 6th book is... or 5th book. So the 5th book. So book 1, I need the 5th book, which is Dangerous Empress, which is out in ebook, but is not out yet in... Is it out yet in physical copy? Oh, here it is. Dangerous Empress is now out in physical. Yay! The paperback of Dangerous Empress is now out. I can order that. So I will then have all of them, and I will finish that. I also received in the mail, I don't have the physical copy with me right now, but see, I keep forgetting that technically Dangerous Empress is book 5, and that's the one that just came out. But there's also the prequel companion novella called The Archduke, which is book 1, but from Dangerous' perspective. And you're like, okay, so that kind of messes up my number, but whatever. I'm going to read them in order. So dangerous assassin, then outlaw, traitor, sorceress, and then empress. Um, and but the other book that I got, because I pre-ordered it and it came this week, is from Jill Barup. And if you follow her on, ooh, hi. Follow her on YouTube, you will know that she published a fantasy series, she published a book called Just Stab Me Now. Jill Barup is a lot of fight analysis, really kind of interesting, and looking at armor and whether it was really, would this fictional work, fictional thing, would it actually function as armor? Yes, no, or just stab me now. And this is, when I saw the description for this that she was putting together and was like, this is the book I'm going to publish, the overview is, a desperate mother, a dubious escort, and a deranged author who won't leave them alone. Caroline Lindy is determined that her new romance novel will be her best one yet. Fantasy, formal gowns, fencing, and of course a 20-something heroine to star in an enemies to lovers plot with all of Caroline's favorite tropes. But Lady Rosamond Hawkhurst is a 36-year-old widow. She has a war to stop, 2 children to get home to, and flatly refuses to take the correct approach to there being only one bed. What's an author to do? Especially when discussions with her editor might reveal that he and Rosamund's hot enemy have some suspicious similarities. And I was like, I'm going to prove my age by citing 2 things. Romancing the Stone, but better. But Romancing the Stone, but better. And one of my favorite musicals of all time, yes, but which is not Romancing the Stone, but is God, what is it? The title of the song? Oh God, I'm just totally blanking on this musical. The musical City of Angels, and the what is the song? You're Nothing Without Me. There is a song in the musical City of Angels, not the movie with Meg Ryan and whatever, but Tom Hanks, I think. But the actual musical City of Angels. And there is a song in this called You're Nothing Without Me, where the plot of the musical is about a scriptwriter writing a noir film and then also at the same time there are the characters of the film noir that he is writing. And in the song You're Nothing Without Me, it is the writer and the character that he's writing about talking about you're nothing without him. And I just need the lyrics, because this is like, I'm not going to sing this. You are some gumshoe, you just don't think well. Get this, dumb gumshoe, you come from my inkwell. Is your mouth lonely with one foot in there? Stone, your brain only holds thoughts I put in there. Just what you are, I'll spell out. You're a novel pain, one speck of lint that fell out the last time I picked my brain. You're so jealous of my trackroid, Tolstoy, do tell us your feeble hack record. Your weak knees brand you soft and unstable. One small threat and you fold like a card table. You drool at my adventures. Your broads in bed are bored. Go home and soak your dentures. Your pen is no match for my sword. You are nothing without me, a no one who'd go undefined. You wouldn't exist, you'd never be missed. It is so much a diss track between the two on stage, and it's like when you actually see this done well on stage, it is, the lighting is such that that Stone, who's the fictional character, right? He's the gumshoe, he's the fictional detective, is always in like sepia tones and black and white, and then the brighter lighting is always on the real world. And Stein, who is the writer. I was like, oh, there's now a book about a romance writer fighting with her romance character about how this plot is going to go and where things are. Sign me up. Literally, I will. And I pre-ordered it, and I have it. It's sitting over there, and I cannot wait to read it. So I think I'm going to read this and finish the Dangerous series for next week. And I will probably re-listen to City of Angels because it is that good of a show. And I love it. Like, one of my favorite lines is, "You're in my plot, I'm still your creator, I call each shot, I'm your private dictator. You're so thick, you eat, breathe, sleep fiction, I'm your meal ticket, knee-deep in cheap fiction." You gloating ignoramus, you haven't any shame. Hey, I'm a famous Seamus, and most people don't know your name. You're nothing without me. Without me, you'd just disappear right into thin air, and no one would care, or notice you were ever were here. A puppet, an upstart, a loser who's destined to fall. I'm everything you always wanted to be. Let's deal with the issue. You wish you were me. You're nothing without me. Without me, you're nothing at all. I'm like, boom. This show is so well done. It is, if it was done as a, like, I could see this song today being done as a rap diss track, and it could work, but at the same time, the reason I'm just reading it because I don't want to get DMCA takedown, but the music behind this is so punctuating, snappy on it. It's so good. And so, yes, Just Stab Me Now, I have ordered, was, that and City of Angels. I'm gonna be my thing. Like, I'm gonna be enjoying, Valentine's Day by reading romance and snarky, metafiction where a writer talks to her creation, which I think is on point. So, that is what I'm going to read. We also are still working through our community reads. We are reading book for at the end of the month, the last Saturday of the month. We always talk about our community reads. And our community reads for this month are Golden Sun, which is by Pierce Brown, which is book 2 in the Red Rising trilogy. Saga now. It's officially a saga now. There are 6 books. And then The Alexandria Link by Steve Berry, which is the second book in the Cotton Malone thriller history mystery series that's really kind of enjoyable. But what are you all reading? And is there anything that you're really looking forward to? I'm hopeful I'm also going to be able to get a hold of book Shadowed Sun, which is N.K. Jemison's book 2 in the Dreamblood duology. I read The Killing Moon for last week, but my library didn't have book 2 available for this week. So I put it on reserve. We'll see how long it takes to get. And then eventually I hope to get Fonda Lee's book 3, Jade War, which is the end of the Greenbone saga. And I am hopeful that that will be in the next couple weeks, but we'll see what happens. Ooh, Fairy Tale from Stephen King. I have this really complicated relationship with Stephen King, right? Like, I think he has really great, really high concept, good ideas. And sometimes he works really well, and sometimes he doesn't. And I don't know how much of that is him as a writer or the editors that he has, because sometimes it's very obvious that that there are certain books that are better edited than others, and then there are certain stories that I'm just like, I just can't. I just can't. But that's just me. And as one of the things I make a point of saying on this whenever we talk about books is that there's an audience for every book, and not every book has to be for every person, and that is okay. You can enjoy a book really a lot, and I can be like, okay, it wasn't for me, but I know I can see why you enjoy it, or is like, I'm sure you do, you know? And like, we were talking about romance fantasy, right? Like specifically the Dangerous series and the Fey Realm series and all of these other like romance fantasy novels with a heavy romance bent. I guess the new genre term is romantasy. And I made a point of saying, I make a point of saying is like, I am not a fan of Sarah J. Maas. I have read Throne of Glass and ACOTAR and the first Crescent City book that I can't even remember at the moment. Like, I have tried. Sarah J. Maas is not for me. But I can recognize that they have an appeal to some people, and that they are something that people can enjoy. Not me, but that's okay. You enjoy them. Exactly, Mithrin. Mithrin says, I love to find new authors because it's so easy to get stuck to the same ones. Sometimes you got to know when you were younger. Exactly. Like, you need to, and that's why I'm actually kind of enjoying, one of the things I always like to do is either go into the library and just like walk up to what are the new releases section and be like, okay, what is released currently? Is there any of this going to be into my interest? And I have a rule, and this is my rule, right? Like, this is how I gauge books. And it doesn't work for everybody, and I understand that. And my rule is, I have a first page test. If I pick up your book, and I read through the first page of that book, and I then turn the page, I'm either going to buy it or check it out from the library and give it a full read, right? If I don't want to turn the page, then I'm not going to read it. If you as the author cannot make me want to turn the page to see what happens next off of the first page, then it doesn't matter how good the book gets later on. I'm not here for it. And it doesn't feel... And there are people like, well, there's books that are slow builds. I'm like, yes, I read a lot of them. R.J. Barker, who is one of my current favorite authors, I never have an author who is an immediate, well, that's not true. There's one author who I will read every single book that she writes, regardless of what it is, and that is Tamora Pierce. Tamora Pierce is God level, and she exists over here. And if there is ever a time in which we are blessed with a visual adaptation of anything out of the Tamora Pierce world of fiction, I will watch it. I will still be concerned because, adaptations of fantasy novels rarely go well, but whatever. Um, whatever. But other than that, other than Tamora Pierce, R.J. Barker is an author that has moved up to what I call give them a chance authors. I know that not every book an author writes is going to be for me. Again, going back to like Stephen King. I don't like all of Stephen King's books, and that's okay. But R.J. Barker is now of a level of like, I will give every book that he writes a chance because I have read through the Tide Child series and Gods of the Weird Wood, and I'm going to pick up the Assassin series probably in March just because I want to give myself a little bit of time for it. But that series, all the Tide Child trilogy and Gods of the Weird Wood, are both slow build books. The first book in the Tide Child series, The Bone Ships, literally, you do not get a name for the two characters that you meet until page 8. Like, these two characters are involved in a conversation. There is description happening. There is world explanation and building going on. And there is not a name for these characters until page 8. Trust me, I can deal with a slow build. But if you can't get me to turn that first page, then I'm not going to read it. And I have tried Sarah J. Maas. I have tried so hard. But they are just not for me. I recognize why they could be for some other people. And I am glad that sometimes people, I'm glad that there is an audience out there for this, that people who really enjoy that kind of story are getting really good books out of it. Not for me. Oh no, Sly. It's not even character building. It is, so hold for 1 second. Okay. You laugh, but there are actual stacks. It is an epic chair. I am quite enjoying my House Stark. Oh, Secret Labs. I have to fix that. That's upside down. Okay, so we were talking about the Bone Ships. Book 1. Also, can we appreciate the cover of this book? How gorgeous this is? This book is the shortest of the trilogy at 464 pages. The first 8 pages are are evocative, emotional, descriptive. It's a conversation between two characters, and you do not get a name until page 8. Like, the first line of this book is, "Give me your hat." They were not the sort of words that you'd expect to start a legend, but they were the first words he ever heard her say. She said them to him, of course. It was early. The scent of fish filled his nose and worked its way into his stomach, awakening the burgeoning nausea. His head ached and his hands trembled in a way that would only be stilled by the first cup of ship wine. Then the pain in his mind would fade as the thick liquid slithered down his gullet, warming his throat and guts. After the first cup would come the second, and with that would come the numbness that told him he was on his way to deadening his mind the way his body was dead, or waiting to be. Then there would be a third cup, and then a fourth, and then a fifth, and the day would be over and he would slip into darkness. But the black ship in the quiet harbor would still sit at its rope. Its bones would creak as they pulled against the tide. The crew would moan and creak as they drank on its decks, and he would fall into unconsciousness in this old flencer's hut. Here he was, shipwife in name only, commander in word only, failure. And then I immediately wanted to turn the page, and that is literally the first page of this book. And it has... I have talked about this series a lot on previous episodes of this chat. It is... I firmly recommend... If I have described R.J. Barker's fiction as... not grimdark fantasy, but Grimm's dark fantasy. And it is like the kind of fantasy you would get from the Brothers Grimm fairy tales kind of stuff. And the Tidechild series, which is a trilogy set in a fantasy world with ships, and instead of like... ships are made from the bones of dead dragons. All of the main characters are on a ship of the damned, i.e. they have been condemned to death for crimes, and the Navy has said, rather than just murder them and condemn them, you're going to go serve on this ship that is a black ship, and you will die in service of the country. And this trilogy does so much, and it is, as I have mentioned before, it is a large world building. I also love the fact that R.J. Barker does a really good job of putting an appendix at the end of the book where he defines the terms that he's created, like shipwife, and all of these things. He also has a really long author's note at the end of the third book that kind of talks about his writing process and how he put in a lot of effort to think about how things would be phrased without using naval terms that they would never have come across because you know, it's not the same. But the premise in the story and the characters, and you're like... Hi, yeah, there are characters that die in this book that you're like, yeah, by the way, it's a giant book about Ship of the Damned and the world building, and they're at war. There are a lot of people who are going to die in this trilogy. Spoiler alert. And there are death scenes in this book where you're just like, I need to stop. But I can't put this book down. But I have emotions that I need to process because I felt that. I felt a lot of that. But I'm like... But yes, so R.J. Barker. Firmly recommend. Definitely good book. But great author, and the 4 books I've read by him have been very, very good. I'm going to read his 3 other books that are currently published, probably in the next couple months. But yes... Going to read Just Stab Me Now and the rest of the Dangerous series for next week and go from there. But yeah, if there's any other books that you want to know about, you want to chat about, I have been doing these for 8 weeks. I realized I put up the VOD on YouTube that this is session 8 or session 9 of I think it is session 9. Session 9 of the of this weekly book chats, and that actually is really kind of cool to me that we have been talking about books for actually it's closer to 10 weeks because we skipped a week, but we've been chatting about books for 9 sessions and nine of these episodes, and I'm really kind of glad because that gives me a lot of time to talk about books that I read, but also get an idea. And I am also really, really enjoying focusing on a diverse variety of authors, both independent and traditionally published authors. And again, I firmly encourage people to read books in whatever way makes sense for you. If that's audiobook, if that's digital, if that's physical copies, if you're borrowing books from the library, if you're using the Libby app or Hoopla to borrow audiobooks or digital books from your local library, or even national libraries from interlibrary loan, which is a thing, and I firmly recommend. If you... Hi, by the way, this series, Catherine's Fey Realm series, beautiful, beautiful books that they are, you can get them as physical books. But they're also free. They're free if you have Kindle Unlimited. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, go get that. I personally physically struggle to read books on an ebook format. I also really, really cannot, because of my own issues, do audiobooks. It just doesn't work for me. But if they work for you, there are audiobooks out there for all of these. There are great ways to read and introduce yourself to new authors and experiences. And one of the things I make sure to do on each of the VODs as they go up on YouTube, again, I have a YouTube, you can check out all the VODs there, for both, and they're nice neat playlists, for all of the TTRPGs I run, but also for these. And one of the things I make a point of doing is for every book we discuss, whether that's a book I read or we just randomly discuss it, I try and put the author link in the chat, not the chat, the descriptor box. That way people can try and figure out how they would like to engage with that particular author's work, if it's a book that interests them. But that is me. And that is what I think about books, or at least the books I've read so far this week. I am going, is there a way, is there a film version of the City of Angels musical? No, but there's a bunch of clips from it that you can find on YouTube, and I'm not going to talk about how they got there. Interesting. So, anything else interesting that you're reading? Crit says, they are a book hoarder more than a reader, and Prax is not helping. Going to go broke buying something library. Look, again, support your local libraries, people. Go and read at your local libraries. Have fun. Enjoy. See what they've got. And also, don't forget, if you walk in and a book that I mention or someone else mentions that you think would be really great to read from the library and your library doesn't have it, let your librarian know. They will. Most libraries have a little section that says, either like on their website or on their, with like little notations actually at the circulation desk, and they'll be like, request a book, and the book librarian will go and see if they can actually get a copy of that book. Real estate licensing book, not as good as fantasy novels. No, it's not as good as fantasy novels, Sly, but I'm sure it will be beneficial to you in the future. So I hope your reading and studying goes well. And like I said, libraries, Libby app, Hoopla, if you... Yeah, the New York Public Library downsized a bit. Yeah, I see you, Mayor Adams. I see what you did to Brooklyn and Queens, and the fact that they have to remove Sunday, that they have to be closed on Sundays now because of reduced funding. Also, spoiler alert, you can get a New York City Public Library card anywhere in the United States for interlibrary loan purposes or for ebook purposes, if your local library doesn't have something. Just saying. Some of us may have taken advantage of that. Also, if you get a New York Public Library card, you can use it for research purposes if you choose to go to the main branch at on Fifth Avenue and use it for the Rose reading room. Some of us may have done that too. Spring says, I started reading this week, Burn It Down, Power, Complicity, and the Call for Change in Hollywood. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't been reading a lot of nonfiction. So I've been finishing my law degree, so I've not been reading a lot of nonfiction that hasn't been for my law degree, right? Like, my reading right now is mostly fiction so that I can take a break from reading for the law degree. There's a lot. You know, and if you want to, yeah, it's why I'm sticking to fiction. And people say that law reading is dry. Sometimes it is, and sometimes you're like, y'all motherfuckers actually argued this case. This is something you really, I need to know more about this. Like, some of these cases you sit there and you read and you're like, this is obviously like so much level of drama, and all you know is whatever you get from like the court filings, the actual opinions that are filed by either the Supreme Court or the circuit courts. And you're like, what happened next, right? Because like something had to have happened next with these issues. And you're just, I'm like, can I get the details, please? No? Okay. Some of them I've actually had to go and like look up, you know, oh no, Coldrake is like, you want to talk about interesting things? This case that actually happened in the state of New York and might be relevant for you, Sly. This might be relevant for you in real estate licensing. Did you know that particularly in a number of states, and particularly the state of New York and everything in the Second Circuit, which includes Connecticut, New York, and Connecticut, New York, and New Hampshire, Vermont, because Massachusetts is on the First Circuit. And anyways, moving on. But Rhode Island, it might be Rhode Island. I should check that because I'm going to need to know it in a couple months. But anyways, Second Circuit, appeals court, and then it gets bought by a bunch of other circuits. That failure to disclose a house is haunted is valid reason to break the contract for the purchase of the house. Not just haunted, right? Like, it is, you can break the contract for the sale of the house because the house is haunted, because you haven't disclosed that there was a murder. Now, for some people, that might be a selling point. It actually was a selling point. No, it didn't come from Salem. It actually came from, it technically came from Connecticut, because it came from the Amityville house. The you know the movie Amityville Horror? Amityville is a place in Connecticut. The Amityville Horror House is a physical thing. And there was a murder that happened in this. And there was an actual story about this. And about the sale of this house. And they were like, yo, y'all did not disclose this house is haunted. We're bouncing. Bye-bye. The agent must disclose anything wrong with the house, including if the house is haunted. And according to the Federal Court of Appeals, and it has never been taken up by the Supreme Court and probably never will be, but according to the Federal Court of Appeals, in three circuits, which is 2nd, 7th, and 9th, which are the big circuits, New York, Chicago, and California, failure to disclose that the house is haunted counts as something wrong with the house. You're like, okay. Failure to disclose that the house was the sign, that there was A failure to disclose with, hi, there were multiple break-ins down the street, and this house had a sacrificial, circle on it. That this house was built, is hella haunted. All of this is going to be a thing. You don't see. Here's the fun thing, Sly. It doesn't actually have to prove that the house is haunted. They just have to prove that the neighborhood knew that that the house is haunted, and that you could go in and talk to the neighbors. It's like, oh yeah, everybody knows that house is haunted. Like, it's been haunted for 100 years, and you can find out records of it about this massacre that happened 50 years ago down the street. Like, literally, all they had to do was talk to the neighbors and then take that to the court and said, hi, if we had known about this, we would never have bought this house. But the agent failed to disclose that the house was haunted, and therefore, yeah, it just needs to have a reputation. It doesn't need the haunted thing. It just needs to have a reputation. Yep, a new housing project built on an old Indian burial ground. Actually, every one of those houses now has to disclose you're built on an Indian burial ground, a Native American burial ground, and may or may not be haunted. Or, what was another really fun one? Yeah, exactly. It's the house in the neighborhood that all the kids dare each other to spend the night in, and everyone knows it. That counts. It is. And you're sitting there going, why? Okay. All right. You laugh, Crit. But that's a whole other issue. That's a whole other issue. There's not that many like, people talk about New York City being all murder happy, and there's not, actually. There are large protections of the city where there hasn't been a murder in almost for 100 years. Then there are other sections of the city, but that's not the point. Exactly. Crit is correct. No, that's Chicago. Chicago has a higher murder rate and always has. I was always like, a thing. But I think that's what we're going to call it for tonight, because it was a very beautiful season with such nice people. Yep. Look, I love New York. I live 45 minutes away from New York on the train. I love going into New York and just spending the day with my friends in the city, and whether that's in Manhattan or Brooklyn or Queens or Bronx, Harlem. My cousins that used to live but no longer do, but still have friends who live in Little Italy, going down and visiting people in Chinatown. But thank you all for coming and hanging out tonight. Thank you, Pirate, for bringing your crew over. And thank you for those of you who chose to hang around and hang out with me here tonight. You can find me, I am your friendly neighborhood Prax. You can find me tomorrow, right back here, 8 p.m. Eastern, for episode 3 of Mass Effect: The Gathering Dark, where we are infiltrating Novaria by using our Solarian as a honeypot. I'm sure this is gonna go fine. That is literally what happened, and if you missed it, there's the VOD is up on YouTube. Again, you can check it out on right there. Leave me a comment, question, thought, all those things. They help with one of this. And you can also then find me on Monday night over on Wandering DM as we return for our Vampire the Masquerade Montreal by Night. I get to play a Ravnos, and nothing is my fault. Actually, literally, nothing is currently the Ravnos' fault. Lots of shit is going down. Lots of shit is broken as fuck. And we may or may not be trying to infiltrate a Sabbat cathedral under the city. Still not the Ravnos' fault, which I appreciate. But then we'll be back here on Saturday. We're going to talk about the rest of the Dangerous series and Just Stab Me Now, because I am going to have a lot of fun with that. And so again, I thank you all, and we should see if there's anybody up for us to raid. Oh, Cybernation Uncensored is up. We should go raid them. They are good people. They are playing Death in Space. I'm sure this is going to be a great time. Have yourselves a great night, everybody, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.